Yeah, I'm a crowd psychologist and study crowd behaviour. And when we talk and think about crowds, quite often we come up with negative terms. We have negative ideas about crowds. And what I want to talk about is some of my research, which is interested in how crowds have the potential to provide us with comfort, with happiness, and even with joy. One of the negative views that we often have of crowds has to do with this kind of situation. You go on the tube, a rush hour, and you've got people in your face. It's horrible, it's subversive, we don't like it. On the other hand, we also seek out and enjoy the crowd. When we want to party, when we want to celebrate, we want to do it with other people. We do it in a crowd. Here's another negative view of crowds. This is in disasters, in emergencies. People are supposedly subject to irrational mass panic. They behave in selfish ways. But there's lots of research which shows that in emergencies, people are brought together in solidarity and mutual aid. And the argument is that it's when people have a shared social identity with others, when they see others as us rather than them, that they both enjoy the crowded situation and show solidarity in emergencies. So that's two types of crowded situations which are seen as negative but also can be seen as positive. And here's another one. This is the one I'm going to talk about for the rest of this presentation. These are the crowds involved in struggles, in protests, in riots, resistance, and sometimes social change. Well, why I find this interesting, and why I would like to talk about it, is because here we see the same social identity I talked about earlier, the same social identity that determines our positive experience in crowd situations. It makes us show solidarity in emergencies. Here, social identity can be not only a cause of what we do, how we experience crowds, it can also be an outcome of the crowd event. Let me talk you through a particular crowd that I got involved in and I did some research on from a case study. Now this crowd was involved in the anti-roads movement of the 1990s. It wanted to prevent a motorway being built through their village green. Now in those days, when there was a plan to build a road, the debate around whether that road should be built stopped at the point of the public inquiry. All discussion was over then. But this crowd wanted to continue the argument, and it did so through direct action. But the people who gathered together in a crowd in this movement were initially quite fragmented. There were different people. They didn't see themselves as a single crowd. They were split particularly on the one hand between those people who saw themselves as activists and protesters, and on the other hand, people who saw themselves just as local residents, kind of middle-class, normal people who wouldn't get involved in that kind of thing. But they had a shared relationship to road building and to the road, and a shared exclusion from the site of that building of the road. And that made them feel that they were a single psychological group. It gave them a single social identity. It made them feel as one. And importantly, that shared social identity gave them an expectation of support for the action they wanted to take against the road. So I just want to tell you what happened next. So they gathered for a symbolic tree dressing ceremony on the green to be dug up for the road. And they got there and they found the ancient chestnut tree surrounded by all these fences ready to be dug up to make way for the road. But everybody felt as one. The local residents and the activists and protesters felt they were the same group, and they were together for the first time as a big crowd. And having that sense of unity, when one person climbed into the site, he knew others would back him up, and they did. And others came into the site, and they had the tree dressing ceremony, as you can see in the picture. But there was more. Some also felt confident enough to start pushing down the fences surrounding the site. And because they were all as one, they expected other people to join in. And they did join in. In fact, they felt that everybody joined in. The local residents, the children, the families, the older people, the protesters, everybody. The police and security guards who were there were completely outwhelmed and outnumbered. And soon all the fences in the site were pushed down. And in effect, it was no longer a building site anymore by the end. It was a free space once again. It was common land, the common land that they thought it would be and thought it should be. Now, when I interviewed people during this event and afterwards, it was a very emotional account they gave of themselves. They were excited. They were joyful. They couldn't stop smiling as they talked about this. They talked about feeling empowered. What does that mean? It meant they had a great confidence in themselves as members of this group and a confidence in the ability of this campaign to act upon the world rather than accept the world they were kind of being given. It was empowering because they created a different world, and that made them, and this is the point about social identity being an outcome, not just an input into crowd behaviour, they were now different people, because they are now empowered people, empowered through their participation in that crowd event. And this is the final point, because it goes back to the positive and the negative, because for these people, taking part in this event, it was joyous, it was like a party. It was like a carnival. In fact, the word carnivalesque has been coined to express the way that partying can be subversive sometimes. And indeed, a few years later, the very same people who were involved in this party were partying in a different way, using reclaiming streets parties as a form of political weapon against car culture and capitalism. So for them, it was joyful. But the very same crowd, here's another example, the very same crowd that for the insiders can be positive and empowering and joyful and like a party, from the outside, to those who have a stake perhaps in the status quo, it can look like chaos. It looks like violence. It's disorder. And they call it madness. They talk about delusions of the crowd. And they call it madness, but I want to put to you that the so-called madness of the crowd lies in the eye of the beholder. Because what they call madness